Ole Miss recruiting is about to change, and we're going to tell you why here on this crossover Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On the Portal.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast in this crossover with Locked On Ole Miss. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast and Locked On Ole Miss your first listens each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Right now, you can download the Game Time app and you can get yourself $20 off your first purchase. Ole Miss is one of many schools that took a different approach to recruiting this year with the whole house settlement situation, how the NIL collectives were going to be counted against the cap originally, but there has been a major change in all that. So look for Ole Miss recruiting to change. And part of that might be felt with the commitment of Nasir NASCAR McCoy. He's going to announce later this week. Stephen Willis and I are going to talk about him. We're also going to talk about overall what's happening with Ole Miss recruiting, some other names you need to know about. And then we're going to switch over into the SEC season. Not only expectations for Ole Miss, but who are the teams that are quote unquote under the radar or could surprise? All that and more here on this crossover. And to make it happen with me is Mr. Stephen Willis, Locked On Ole Miss host. Stephen, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing quite well. It's just a huge surprise that all of a sudden the house settlement just fell apart within weeks of it being announced.
I'm not surprised, and I know you're not either. For those that don't know, I'm going to give this simple answer here. This is a lot of lawyer jargon that I could literally spend hours on, but the short of it is the house settlement case was settled, and on July 1st, it went into effect. $20.5 million goes towards every athletic department. Schools like Ole Miss, major football programs, they're going to spend probably 80% of their cash on football, give or take. But they're also talking about, at least they wanted originally, the government, meaning Congress, I never like it when they get involved with college athletics, along with the quote-unquote NIL clearinghouse, were saying that even the outside collectives, that money that go to recruits has to count against that cap. That has suddenly changed. If you type in NIL collectives into Google or on X or anywhere else, you're going to see a whole bunch of different people talking about how that has been wiped away. So for the record, the outside collectives are now operating on their own, which was Steve and I were talking about this off air. It was going to happen anyway because they were going to sue the ever-living you-know-what out of all these different people trying to say that an outside entity counts towards a school's cap. It's called outside entity for a reason. They're not one and the same. So it was inevitable. This just saved me a lot of time. And I think it changes recruiting for a couple of reasons. There are going to be schools that have already operated in the thought process that, like Texas, didn't care at all. They just went all in. They've spent more than anybody. So they are where they are. But then you have schools like Ole Miss, Auburn, and some others who were more conservative with how they spent because they were looking at it from the original thought process. Now they have a chance to, quote unquote, make up time, Stephen, and make up commitments. The Rebels have 14 commits. Schools like Auburn's got like 10 or something like that. You're going to see some of these schools, A, flip some players, and B, just get more commitments because they weren't really using their collectives the way that other schools were, Bama, Texas, Georgia, some of the others. And that's going to matter. So let's talk about the first guy on the board here. Just go ahead and loop this all together. Nasir McCoy, who goes by the nickname NASCAR. He's a safety / corner / nickel, whatever you want him to be, from Buford High School, famous program just outside Atlanta. He announces his decision this coming Friday, if I remember correctly. Technically, if somebody came in and made a late offer to him, from what you and I are understanding, Ole Miss would now be in a position to up the ante. Like, those are things that could happen. I'm just, using an obvious possible situation. What do you think? Do you think like this is going to be the beginning of a run? We both expect him to pick Ole Miss. How do you think this is going to work out?
I'm not sure. Texas Tech obviously has been proven right with the way they've been going about stuff and all of this. I think with Ole Miss having Walker Jones and the collective becoming more involved, they probably have to raise a little money at Ole Miss. I don't know where they exactly stand because the house settlement coming up, maybe it's a little bit more depleted than you would normally think it would be. But I need to talk to Walker and find out exactly where they're thinking, because you're right. We're coming up to Jace Matthews season or Deuce Gerald season where they commit. And now all of a sudden, all of these schools can dip into their collective and make a different offer. These players could have been set to go somewhere, and all of a sudden in the next 2 weeks, everything can change.
Absolutely. And for the record, Jace Matthews is one of the most gifted athletes in the class of 26, regardless of position. Mississippi kid, of course, Deuce Gerald's. He has a father that played at Ole Miss. So there's a lot of ties for both those guys. And they're both national recruits. Deuce is a D tackle and Jace is a wide receiver. I think that it just makes things very interesting. It's kind of the odd extra point that it's good for me, gives me stuff to talk about, because there could be some schools that all of a sudden, okay, they're in it, but they're not really. But now they may be, and it could be Ole Miss again. Those two we knew they were going to go after. Maybe they make a different offer to some of the kids they lost out on inside the state of Mississippi and pick one. There's been, like, Ole Miss has not recruited in-state well. We've already discussed that before, but we didn't know the full scope, and this kind of explains it. I will be surprised that if after signing day we do a wrap-up show, Stephen, if one or two of the kids minimum from the inside the state of Mississippi that have committed elsewhere right now don't end up with Ole Miss because of how they approached NIL from the outside, meaning the collectives, compared to, let's just pick a couple easy ones, Alabama, Texas, LSU. Those are some schools that have dipped in to the state of Mississippi and pulled kids in this class. Do they sign all of them now? Ole Miss isn't going to be the only one to add more money, but I think they're going to be one of the biggest risers, because I don't think they were using their collector quite the same as some other people. I just don't know which kids it will be, but they're going to get somebody that is committed outside of the state that's from the Magnolia State. I think that's fascinating. What's your take?
I think that Walker Jones and Lane Kiffin needs to take a targeted approach to this class. Is halfway over. I mean, there's less than 6 months until the name is signed on the dotted line. Try to get into the top two and a lot of the Mississippi prospects, but pick 2 or 3 major prospects. And I don't want to say go all in, but say, hey, let's see. Let's go find and see if Tristan Keys would buy that. Let's go see if Jace Matthews, if that could turn his head. A Deuce Gerald's, something to make a statement to go into that December transfer portal window. You can do signing day into the transfer portal and kind of make your own momentum, because I told Zach Blackerby about this. 2026 is kind of set up to be another year for Ole Miss like 2024 was supposed to be. They're supposed to be, that's supposed to be a run year. This year is like fringe playoff year, but next year they're supposed to be really good. It would also help if you can augment that with the collective to go out and find some of these big name players.
I absolutely agree. When we come back, I want to continue this conversation and look at it from a broader perspective. And then we're going to get into the media's perception of what you just mentioned. Can the Rebels make a run in this year's regular season to make the college football playoff? That is next here on this crossover, Locked on Ole Miss and Locked on the Portal. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you're suddenly realizing that you want to go to be in the stands to see some baseball or something else. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without all the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can spend on a lot of other things. You can get more food, you can buy better seats, you can get merch, whatever it is you want to do. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually go down as the first pitch comes closer, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and the opportunity for the lowest price guarantee. So the first price you see is the one you get at the end. Now, with this, you also get something that I love, clear seat views. When you click on the seat, you can see where you're at. compared to the pitcher's mound or to the stage at a theater. Whatever it is you try to check out, Game Time makes it easy for you to know if you're getting bang for your buck. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. Thank you once again for making Locked On the Portal or Locked On Ole Miss your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm joined by Stephen Willis in this crossover to talk some Rebels. So let's talk a little bit about big picture with Ole Miss. Let's say they finish out this class with 20 kids. Right now they're sitting with 14 prospects in the boat with Kiffin and company. Do you think that number would be okay? Do they need to go up from that, down? Where do you think the final number needs to be for the Ole Miss recruiting class in 2026?
I think 20 is about right. I mean, listen, I've always been all in on the transfer portal for Ole Miss, and I think you can be a dominant program going through the transfer portal each and every year. I think Ole Miss signed 32 or something like that this season. I think that is the way that they are going to build. You need to supplement that with stars. You need to find people with extremely high ceilings. If you can do that, I think from the high school rank and supplement what you're going and plugging holes in the transfer portal, I think you can have a pretty good team.
I agree. Ole Miss is one of the few schools that I'm okay with them using the portal more. The vast majority of schools that win big recruit high school ranks first, but the state of Mississippi, while very good per capita, isn't the most populated state, and they're still not like the natural dominant pro like a Bama or something like that. So mixing the two makes sense, especially something you've talked about, getting kids that left Mississippi to come back home. To me, that's not the same as transfer portal. That's an extension. It's almost like a junior college deal. Some kids move away and they just don't like it. Then they come back home. You need to be the first choice for those kids. Memphis, Southern Miss, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. Those teams should all look at that kind of the same. Kids from the state of Mississippi generally like to stay closer, in my experience. Anyway, so if they go off to Texas A&M or whatever, don't be surprised if they end up back in the Magnolia State in 1 or 2 years. Ole Miss has done a pretty good job with that. My only question is, can Ole Miss do a better job of getting some of the prep linemen, and I don't care where they get them from, out of the high school ranks? That's the one spot I think they need to improve the most, but I've never really worried about Kiffin getting skill guys. That's not really a concern on either side. Like, they could always over-recruit receiver and 1 or 2 guys end up at DB anyway, so that'll take care of itself. Stephen, also, what do you think about Ole Miss's roster right now? If you had to guess without looking at the depth chart, and I know you know the depth chart pretty much off the top of your head, more than likely, how many guys do you think right now in the starting lineup would be transfers, and how many would be prep recruits?
Oh, it's overwhelmingly the majority transfers. I mean, like, look at this, for instance. The best wide receiver unit that Lane Kiffin has had at Ole Miss is likely this season. That doesn't include Trey Harris, Jordan Watkins. Think about what they've had over the last couple of years. Some record-setting guys. You mentioned skill position guys. Lane Kiffin can go get them as well. But I do think that, for instance, Deuce Gerald's, I talked to him at the Under Armour All-American game. He said he wanted to see if Lane Kiffin played high school players in the season. That was the one thing he wanted to see. And I was like, okay, whoever is negative recruiting is not realizing that Suntaran Perkins, Xavion Harris, Cam Franklin, all those guys, William Eccles, Jam Brown, those are all Mississippians, and they're all prep players that could be on the defensive line. Pete Golding has built a defensive front that is very Mississippi-centric and very high school-centric. They're using the transfer portal to find athletes at linebacker, and the secondary is kind of a question mark. So it's going to be more high school players potentially this year than it has normally been, but it's still going to be very, very high on the transfer portal end.
Where do you think they still need to add the most talent? Is it DB from the prep ranks? Obviously, if they get McCoy this Friday, that would be one of them. Is there any other spot they need to hit with this high school class?
Offensive line, obviously, just because you want those prep linemen to hit that. Devin Harper a year ago was a good first step to go kind of very prep offensive lineman. But that and the secondary are kind of the two worry spots. But the secondary is being addressed. If you look at a year ago, Cortez Thomas, Keon Young, Ladarian Clardy, this year Jet Goldsberry, Craig Tutt out of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, going to Ole Miss, and then possibly NASCAR McCoy bring over. They recruited Iverson McCoy, Mason Dunn a year ago. The secondary is very prep looking on the back end of that defense already. The offensive line just kind of needs to get there. That's kind of the worry spot at the moment. But if they get there, if that happens, look out, everyone.
That's what I was talking about a minute ago, because this is a good year in state. There's a couple kids committed to LSU, et cetera. But it goes back to our first segment. How many of those kids will get different offers from the Rebels and some other schools too that LSU has commitments from? I think that's the most important thing for Ole Miss fans to look at. Who do they finish with? Not right now. Who does Ole Miss finish with on both sides of the trenches? As Stephen and I have said a million times on this show, the linemen are the key. They're going to find the skill guys. Not, if Caden Lee and guys like that, a lot of people don't know about yet. Like, we know they've gotten a few high school kids, but they can always supplement a wide receiver from somewhere else if they have to in a year. And you can plug and play. Linemen take longer to develop. They bond together. If they start getting high school linemen, it changes the program immensely. So we'll see how that goes. To that point, I want to pivot right now. I saw a media poll on X for the Southeastern Conference, and everybody's got their take. The media polls take them for what they're worth, but I wasn't really looking at it from a perspective of Ole Miss, but Ole Miss was picked 7th. I don't think that's necessarily far off from where a lot. Everybody's got them somewhere between 5 and 8 pretty much that I've spoken with. So that's not necessarily completely off, but we'll get into them in a second. But first off, Oklahoma, I saw, was picked 10th, and I bring them up for a couple of reasons. When I was growing up, Oklahoma, that was a top 10 program. They were in the top 5 a lot. So like last year, for those that don't remember, at one point they had 6 or 7 wide receivers out. Most of their offensive line was out. Like, it was just a bizarre year. And of course, Oklahoma's used to success. So now Brent Venables is on the hot seat. Totally get it. They bring Arbuckle, the coordinator from Washington State, down. He brings the quarterback with him, John Mateer, one of the top portal transfers. And the Rebels play there. It's going to be a road game. Do you think 10th is too low for Oklahoma? I do. What is your take on that? And what are your thoughts on Oklahoma as a whole?
Listen, my hot take from the entirety of the preseason picking, if you take Texas and Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma is going to have a better year than Texas. And Texas is the preseason number 1, and all the people are around there. I think Oklahoma's a 9-3, 10-2 level team. And I think Texas is a 9-3 or 8-4 level team. And anybody that is willing to give Texas that Oklahoma game doesn't understand that series and how it's gone. So I think Oklahoma has a chance to be 5th, 6th in the conference. And I think Texas, honestly, they are on 8-4 watch. You go on the road to Ohio State, you go on the road to Georgia, you play at the Swamp, you have the Lone Star rivalry, whatever they're calling that now, against Oklahoma. You have Texas A&M. They're going to really want to bow up for that game as well. There is a lot of immensely losable games for Texas, a team that has a brand new quarterback that against the only good team and good defense he played against a year ago, he got pulled out of. All the wide receivers are gone. All the offensive line is gone. The defense is going to be pretty good, but last year the defense for Oklahoma was pretty good. I mean, if you want to see what that looks like, I think Oklahoma might surprise people and end up like a 9-3 season, even with their schedule being so difficult.
I think Oklahoma is going to surprise some people too, and their schedule is pretty crazy. They got Michigan week 2. We'll find out real quick. Michigan may not be great, but they're going to bring some physical football down to Norman. That'll be one of the better games. So when we come back, we're also going to talk about some possible surprises in the SEC And does Ole Miss fit into that category? Should we call them a surprise team at this point? That's another debatable topic. That is next here on this crossover edition. Stephen, what do you think of the notion that Ole Miss has, quote unquote, pulled itself out of the mid-tier? They're pushing for the upper tier. I don't think they've reached it yet. They got to do something in the playoff first, but they're at least on the cusp of reaching the upper tier of the SEC the first time that they actually make the playoff and win a game. How would you rank that?
I still think making the playoff is the number one concern for Ole Miss. Is get to the playoff, get to the playoff, get to the playoff. But they have won 10 games 3 out of the last 4 years. And the year that they did not win 10 games, they started off the year 7-0 and took Alabama, had to throw into the end zone for a chance to beat the Crimson Tide in Oxford. That could have changed their whole season that year. It's at the point where it's a trust Lane Kiffin type situation. They're always going to be really good. It's about making those breaks and those little things to get to the college football playoff. At this point, I don't care about SEC championships. Everything is about the college football playoff and making it to that point. If Ole Miss ever hosts a playoff game, that will be the biggest game in the history of the state of Mississippi, and it's not particularly close.
I would wholeheartedly concur. It's hard to say if they'll host or whatever, any given season, that stuff plays itself out. But it would be cool to see what they would do at the Grove and just like the town itself, because that's not a big town. Like the amount of people that would try to come in for that, there would be so many backstories. It'd be hilarious. And I don't know what college football is going to do long-term, but in some way, shape, or form, I wish they could have the first 2 rounds on campuses because I think, and I know there's a lot of logistical problems. I'm not saying I had the solution to it, but I think that would be fun. Ole Miss would be a cool, just in general. I know you're obviously a big Ole Miss fan and all that, but it would be a very cool game day kind of thing, whether it's, I don't care who carries the playoff any given year. There's a lot of stuff they could do with that. And I'm sure they'd have Eli there and his dad, all that kind of stuff. So I'm all in on that. Now, as for the rest of the Southeastern Conference, are there any teams that you think that will either A, make a surprise run just overall in the rankings, or B, be that team that at least at some point just annoys the crap out of a team that has more talent and upsets them? Who's the most likely to have, well, for lack of a better, Vanderbilt was that team last year, obviously. Ask Alabama fans. So who's it going to be this year? Is it Vandy? Is it somebody else?
I think it's Tennessee, honestly. Tennessee is overlooked. I mean, if Aguiar becomes a consistent quarterback and running that system, they're going to be pretty good. They've put a lot of money into that football program over the last couple of years, and they're going to be annoying, essentially. Are they going to beat Alabama? Probably not. But are they going to be the team that plays against the Florida Gators and all of a sudden the Tennessee Vols are up by 10 points in the fourth quarter? Maybe. I think Tennessee having that kind of a role against those mid-tier teams is going to determine, honestly, who has a shot to make the playoffs and who has the shot to sit at the house or go to a mid-tier bowl game for their season. I think Tennessee is going to have a large say in what's going on, even though I don't think they can make the playoffs this year.
I think Florida is that team, and it's based on the one thing that I hate talking about, but it's still the biggest predictor of anything in college football because it's such a barbaric sport, and that's injuries. Is DJ Lagway healthy all season long? If he's not, Florida is going to fall off the map. They don't have somebody else ready to play. They don't. But he has all the talent in the world. If he develops, they got a lot of talented receivers. They could have some games they're good. I don't trust Billy Napier, don't get me wrong. But at some point, they're going to beat somebody. They got Texas at home. They play Ole Miss, etc. Could they have a game where they just catch fire? Absolutely. Who's it going to be against? Again, I don't trust Napier, but they'll probably be a Dow Jones or a team that's up and down, as Dick Vitale likes to say. But I also think that Florida's talent is a lot better than what we've seen. They just haven't been coached very well the last 4 or 5 years. To be honest, since 2020, they just haven't been that good. So my pick is Florida. I still wouldn't count out Vandy either.
Yeah, I think Vandy is going to be pretty good.
They got a quarterback with 100 years of experience He's got 2 chips on his shoulder. And I think Clark Lee does a pretty good job at Vandy. They're going to be circled a little bit more, if you will, on the schedule, but it's still Vanderbilt. There is no way that Kiffin or anybody else, I don't care what they say to their players, I don't care what they threaten them with. When Vandy comes up that week, you're not going to get the same week of practice out of your players if it was Alabama, Georgia, Florida. You're just not. Mm-hmm. So if you're off that day, we both know how that goes. I mean, like that's probably why Ole Miss lost to Kentucky last year. They didn't, I guarantee if you ask Lane in hindsight, it was their worst week of practice because they're playing Kentucky. Mm-hmm. That stuff happens. That's why coaches go bananas about practices. It won't be
the worst week this year.
Oh, I guarantee it. Like that, you could do a movie on how well the Ole Miss Rebels practice preparing for. That could be an ugly game in Lexington because there's no way you don't remember that if you played on last year's Ole Miss team. There's no way. It kept you out of the playoff. So I totally agree. That's why college football is so wild, though. Stephen, I love the emotion of college football players, coaches, and of course fans. SEC fans are bananas. That game has got so many little small sideline things to it. The odds of Kiffin not commenting about that leading into that game on social says to take a shot at his own team or something to try to motivate them are about 0. I can't wait to see what he says. And he's so good with social media. He might be the best coach in the country with it. So that's a really fun thing. Stephen, tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
We are available on the Locked On Ole Miss YouTube channel, and we're also available wherever you get your podcast. You can check us out on ABC 24 and all the Tegna stations. Pretty awesome stuff as the Locked On Ole Miss podcast is growing. You can follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, all of that good stuff. So give us a subscribe. And we like to have fun, and that's what the show's all about. If you're not having fun, you can be doing something else. So we want it to be as fun as humanly possible.
Absolutely. I totally agree. The Portal Podcast, it can be wherever you get your pods, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere else you get them. Make sure you download and subscribe, share this podcast. We will see you again soon. Take care.